Yes, everyone needs to own their own home. And I say need, some of you might say, well, Carrie, it's not for me today. But even if it's not for you today, I would challenge you to go back to the video that I created on house hacks. So you can buy and then maybe buy a multi-unit and maybe even live in one of the units and then someone else lives in the other units and helps you pay the mortgage. So there's so many ways to own, because eventually after you've lived in the house for so many years, you could move out and make it an income generating property. So always know, when you pay a mortgage, or I'm sorry, when you pay rent, you are paying for someone else's future, building wealth for them, or you're paying off their mortgage. Don't let that be you. So today I want to talk to you about the quickest way to, I want to talk to you about the quickest way to a down payment. And really, it depends on how motivated you are and where you are in your life. And I'll give you my story. So first things first, you need to plan for your purchase. You need to save for a down payment. We're going to talk about creative ways to find money for your down payment. You're going to work with your loan officer on down payment resources. You might find you don't even need one. And then you're going to consider asking the seller to participate with a down payment. And I shouldn't call it down payment. Let's change that to closing cost credit, because the seller can't give you a down payment. They have to give you closing cost credit. Now, so when we talk about that, ask the seller to participate with closing costs, not a down payment. I'll talk to you about prepaids as well, because the seller might give you a certain dollar amount, but if they give you over the dollar amount, whatever is allowed by the mortgage company, that could go to prepaids. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. So when in the process, and then we'll talk about when in the process of buying, we'll talk about that a little bit. So number one, planning for a down payment. Some of you have heard the story. If you've watched my videos or you've seen me on YouTube or Instagram or somewhere, you know that I purchased my house, my first property in 1997, and I had to save for the down payment. We didn't have down payment resources. We didn't have the ability to have the seller participate with closing cost credit. I had to actually come up with the money. So at the time, I purchased from a builder, and then I wrote the contract in July and I closed in November. And the builder allowed me, because I had to put down 5%. Even though I had an FHA loan, the builder required 5% because that money went to helping them start digging the hole. We'll say digging the hole or building the property. So I had to come up with my own money. So I had to limit my spending. So from July, August, September, October, and November, I lived out of the Aldi. And I really lived out of the Aldi. We lived well beneath our means, but I knew it was only for a season. And I had this, you have to limit spending, and this will be challenging if you like to shop. Own it. I own it. I own it. I own it. I like to shop. So if you like to shop, let me challenge you. Take a picture of what you want. Go get a notebook, write it down. What did you want? How much is it? And then I want you to track how much money you would have spent had you bought it. And then maybe you just, maybe you put some other money aside to go back and shop when you're done. But write down what you want and then maybe go back. And then if it's New York & Company, Nordstrom, TJ Maxx, if it's still there after you close, maybe it was meant for you. So limit your spending. Number two, what can you cut back on? For me, it was groceries. For me, it was coffee. For me, it was bringing my own lunch. And some of you, first of all, it'll probably change your life if you bring your own lunch. Grab an apple, make your own egg salad sandwich, maybe a ham sandwich. Maybe it is as simple as bringing your own salad. Bring your own lunch to work, and then snack out of your own lunchbox. So you might bring a granola bar, some nuts. Like, bring your own lunch. And when everybody else wants to go out, maybe you need to do something else. So what can you cut back on? So eating out, making your own coffee at home, staying out of the store. You might even sell some stuff. Number three, open a savings account and have your employer split your check into savings. So what I did was, and I was already doing it. A lot of times we spend all of the money we get. And I don't mean that all of us do, but some of you know who you are. So, you get the money, you spend the money, you get the money, you spend the money. But what you don't see is easier not to spend. So figure out, how can you split your paycheck and live based on maybe 60% of your income or 70% and put the rest in savings, So you can put that money towards a down payment, and you might find you don't even need it all. And then number 4, invest in your 401k. And that's important. That's important. So if you invest in your 401k, that can be leveraged later. So when I say get creative, let's talk about it. Maybe you're going to get a part-time job. It could be driving for Uber. It could be Uber Eats, something you can do that you could do from home that doesn't cost a lot. It could be, when I say get creative, it could be leverage your 401k because your employer might allow you to take out money from your 401k and then you pay yourself back. So you pay the money back to yourself. You might also even find that you've got those 100 pairs of shoes that you need to get rid of. You know, you're not wearing them anyway. You know, they're not coming back in style. Maybe they might. But like, what can you get rid of and make a little bit of money from? Ask someone to hold you accountable. Move back with your parents. You're like, I can't carry. I get it. And maybe it's you're just going to change your living situation. So if you know you're paying $2,000 a month for rent because they got a swimming pool, a workout community, they've got all these amenities, get rid of the amenities, go downgrade your living. And maybe you had to have a 2-bedroom apartment and it's just you, go live in a 1-bedroom. Like, what can you do to get creative to save for a down payment? Can't get the job? Go sell that stuff. Like, get rid of it. Or maybe your neighbor has a bunch of stuff and you say, hey, how about we split it? I'll go sell all your stuff on these websites, Etsy, Poshmark, something. Somebody come to my house so you can sell my stuff. And then don't wait to start the home buying process. Consider a down payment resource. If you missed that video, go back and watch that video. There are so many down payment resources available to all of us. And if you're like, well, Carrie, maybe, what if you find out you don't qualify? Maybe you don't qualify, or maybe the money ran out. Don't worry, because we'll talk about how to ask the seller for closing cost credit. But here's something you need to remember. You will need your down payment in the bank, even if you use a down payment resource. And I'll say that's in most scenarios. I'm not a loan officer, but I've been doing this since 2001. So this is money that you need. Now, you might be required to have other money, but let's just talk about the basics. Now, I went with an FHA loan. FHA, you need 3.5% down. Conventional could be 3%. You might have to put down 5 or 10%, but I went with simple. So we're going to go with 3.5% down. So you must have this in the bank. Again, conventional loans can have less down depending on your credit situation. You need earnest money and application money. So earnest money is the amount you put down when you write the offer, and then you have the loan application fee. Of course, I see a typo, but I think you know what it means. The goal in communication is you get it. Clearly, I could spell it above. So anyway, so when you work with your loan officer, they might have an application fee. That application fee will often go towards the appraisal. And it might even go towards other fees, like if you buy down the rate, which your loan officer will explain, not always in many situations, and earnest money. Now, earnest money is the amount of money you put down when you write the offer on the home, and earnest money could be in any increment. There is no perfect scenario. It could be 500, 1,000, 2,000, 3,000. And here's what I want you to know. That goes towards your purchase. So it could be a part of your closing costs or your down payment. So if you put down $1,000, just know that is not over and above the 3.5% or your closing cost credit. That is in addition to, let me say it like this. If I'm the buyer's agent, if I'm representing you and you write earnest money, typically what's happening is you're putting that money into escrow. It could be that the attorney's going to hold it, the listing brokerage is going to hold the money, or title company is going to hold the money. The seller doesn't hold the money in most scenarios, in most cases. So that money, that check will get cashed. I like to say that because sometimes you write a check and it's in savings and you're like, oh, I didn't know it was going to get cashed. If you write a check, it's getting cashed. And then that money will be credited to you at closing. And then closing cost credit estimated around $5,600. And I say this because estimated, it depends on the market. And then we're going to ask the seller to pay your closing costs, not down payment, closing costs. And often that can be written on the contract. So in Illinois, that's written on the contract. In Florida, could be a little bit different. So let me give you a scenario. So what I did is I pulled a few different cities, no cities particularly, but I grew up in this city, so I picked it. So I went with if you can see, a 2-bedroom home, 235. So if you purchase a home at 235, FHA, you're going to need 3.5% down. So $8,225. So in the bank, needs to be in the bank when you close. Then if you have closing costs of 5,600, you're going to need about $13,825 in the bank. But if you have the seller participate with closing cost credits, that money will stay in the bank. The other thing you need to know, depending on your market, you might get a tax credit. So if the taxes on this property were $3,000 or $4,000, you could easily deduct that as well. So if I were to break out my calculator, and this is why you have to talk to a loan officer, because these are estimates. So to give you a good example, I should have put this in the presentation, is if you know the cost is you need to put $13,825 in the bank, but the seller participates with closing costs, which is $5,600. That means now you only need to come to closing with maybe the $8,225. And I say maybe because there could be some other prepaids like attorney fees, inspection fees, other fees. Maybe you need to pay something off because you didn't pay something, and in order to close, you need to pay off a debt. But you have a tax credit of maybe $5,000. So you may only come to closing with $3,225. I give you this explanation because a lot of times people go, oh, I don't have the money. And you're like, I don't want to put the money down. All you need to remember is if you ask the seller to participate with closing cost credit, that gets credited to you. So you get to keep the money in the bank. And then you get a tax credit because the seller we pay taxes in arrears, especially in Illinois. So right now it's 2023 when I'm presenting this. We haven't gotten our tax bills for 2022, which in DuPage County, it comes around May. So I know that the seller needs to give a credit for the entire 2022 tax year. And then if we close in April, they need to give me a credit for January, February, March, April. So additional 4 months. So you're going to get a tax credit. So now you work with your loan officer and they kind of give you this scenario, but that doesn't mean you can spend the money. You have to keep the money in the bank, So let me give you another scenario. So this one is a different area, which is Lombard. This is where my mother grew up. So if you purchase a property at $332,000, you need $11,600 in the bank, and estimated closing costs $5,600. So you need about $17,200. You feel like that's a lot? That's where I was in 2001, because it was 1997, because I had to pay I had to actually pay the money to the builder. But I pulled one for $95,000. This probably feels like it's a little easier to swallow. So 3.5% for $95,000 is $2,850. And then estimated closing costs about $5,600. So total in the bank is $8,450. But let's say, and let's do the math on this one, $8,450 minus that $5,600 that you asked the seller to participate with. And depending on the loan, your loan officer will tell you if you can ask the seller for a little bit more, and that money can go towards prepaids. Because what I didn't say to you is if you don't put down 20%, you have to escrow your taxes, which means you have to every month when you pay your mortgage, you're also putting money in the bank for the bank to pay your real estate taxes. They want to pay your real estate taxes because they don't want you to lose your home for taxes. So if you don't put down 20%, the bank is going to put money in another account to pay your taxes when they come due. So you might have other prepaids that you have to pay towards closing costs. So you could ask the seller to participate with a little more. Now, I'm making this sound great. Don't get frustrated if we have to negotiate differently. We might not ask for the full $5,600, but just know there are options available, especially if you're in a market where the buyers have leverage. Right now, the sellers still might have a little bit more leverage, but homes are sitting on the market a little bit longer in some of our cities. So now, remember, let's just say, so now we're $2,850 because the seller participated with closing cost credit, but let's say now the taxes were $3,500. You may only have to come to closing with around $650. And I say might because these are only estimates, and your loan officer will give you the numbers. So as stressful as it may sound, remember this: every time you pay rent, you are paying for someone else to build wealth, and you could be paying off their mortgage. And I have a scenario where the tenant paid off someone's mortgage. Don't let that be you. So remember, these are only estimates. Your loan officer will be more specific, but this should get you started with savings. So number one, you got to set goals. When do you want to be in the home? If you want to be in the home by November, you have time. If you're like, you know what, I need more time to plan, I want to go save some more money, it could be the next year. Number two, live beneath your means until you are in your home. Live beneath your means. You could do it. Believe in you. Get some money to hold you accountable. Number three, do this with friends or have someone hold you accountable. Number four, it's only for a season. It's only for a season. What is the reason you want to own? Do you want stability for your family? Do you want to be able to maybe one day make it an investment property? Now, before you go buy a condo or a townhouse, make sure that's an option. You need to read the rules because HOAs or homeowner associations might not allow you to rent them out. Do your research. But I just want you to know you can do this. I didn't have a down payment. Again, Aldi was my friend. So rewatch the video, Steps to Home Ownership, engage in this group, post your questions or send a private message, start previewing homes online right there, homesnap.com, Mark-Little. And then if you're ready to invest in your future, go to bit.ly, buy a home with us. Feel free, you can reach out anytime. Feel free to call, text, or email Mark. Mark's email is mark@carmarkrealty.com. If you are in Florida, it is markx@caremarkrealtygroup.com. No E, caremarkrealtygroup.com. We look forward to helping you get into a home. There is no scary question. If you have challenged credit, let us talk you through it. Let us have you talk to a loan officer. There's absolutely no reason why you can't plan to own. Everyone has the right to home ownership.